The ongoing war in Ukraine has taken a shocking new turn with the revelation of direct North Korean involvement alongside Russian forces. Despite months of rumors and intermittent evidence, including drone footage and battlefield recoveries of North Korean casualties, both Moscow and Pyongyang have consistently denied such allegations. However, Ukraine's recent capture of North Korean soldiers provides irrefutable proof of this unlikely alliance and sheds light on its broader implications for the conflict and international relations. On January 11th, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced via social media platform X that Ukrainian forces had successfully captured 2 North Korean military personnel during operations in the contested KSK region. The soldiers, though wounded, were safely transported to Kyiv for interrogation by the Security Service of Ukraine, SBU. This marks a watershed moment in the war, as these are the first living captives to confirm North Korea's direct participation in the conflict. Their testimonies are expected to unravel the extent of Pyongyang's role in supporting Russia's increasingly desperate military campaign. This capture is particularly significant given the long-standing international skepticism regarding earlier claims of North Korean involvement. Although previous incidents, such as drone footage and unverified images of deceased North Korean soldiers, hinted at their participation, the absence of living proof allowed Russia and North Korea to maintain plausible deniability. Now, Ukraine has broken this cycle with hard evidence. Early interrogation of the captured soldiers has already yielded startling insights into the conditions and motivations behind their deployment. Ukrainian authorities suggest that these fighters are being used as expendable manpower on the front lines, facing grueling conditions and betrayal from their Russian allies. This aligns with broader patterns of exploitation seen in Russia's military partnerships, where foreign fighters are often treated as disposable assets. The unfolding revelations are poised to reshape how the global community perceives North Korea's involvement in the war. For decades, Pyongyang has operated as a pariah state, largely isolated, but occasionally extending military support to ideologically aligned nations. This new chapter reveals the desperation underpinning its alliance with Russia, exposing vulnerabilities in the Kremlin strategy. This is not the first time Ukrainian forces have captured North Korean personnel. In December, South Korea's National Intelligence Service, NIS, reported that Ukraine had taken a seriously injured North Korean soldier as a prisoner of war. Tragically, the soldier succumbed to his wounds before sharing actionable intelligence. A photograph purportedly showing this individual later circulated on Telegram, igniting further speculation about the extent of North Korean troop deployment. Although this incident initially raised eyebrows, it lacked the definitive impact of living testimony, which makes the January capture a far more consequential event. Recognizing the potential intelligence value of these captives, Ukrainian forces have refined their strategies to target North Korean soldiers, adapting their psychological operations and military maneuvers accordingly. Ukraine's innovative psychological operations, particularly the I Want to Live initiative, have proven highly effective in persuading Russian soldiers to surrender. Launched in September 2022, the program offers safe surrender pathways through a 24-hour hotline, Telegram chatbots, and social media campaigns. To date, it has facilitated the surrender of more than 350 Russian troops, demonstrating its strategic value. Building on this success, Ukraine expanded the program in October to specifically target North Korean fighters. Ukrainian military intelligence began disseminating Korean-language content across various platforms, including YouTube, X, and Telegram. These messages directly appealed to North Korean soldiers, urging them to surrender and highlighting the futility of sacrificing their lives in a foreign conflict. The appeals promised food, shelter, and medical care for those who chose to defect, providing a humane alternative to continued participation in a brutal war. This effort underscores Ukraine's commitment to not only weaken the enemy's ranks, but also to expose the coercive and exploitative conditions under which these soldiers operate. By incorporating linguistic and cultural considerations, Ukraine has demonstrated a nuanced approach to psychological warfare. The involvement of North Korean fighters in Ukraine reveals the extent of Russia's desperation, as it struggles to sustain its war effort. It also highlights the increasing willingness of authoritarian regimes to forge opportunistic alliances, often at the expense of their own people. For North Korea, the alliance with Russia reflects a calculated yet precarious gamble to secure resources and international leverage. These developments raise critical questions about the role of international actors in addressing this alliance. Will global powers, including the United Nations, impose further sanctions on Pyongyang and Moscow? How might this affect ongoing efforts to curtail North Korea's nuclear ambitions? And perhaps most importantly, what does this reveal about the state of global geopolitics in the face of escalating conflicts? The capture of North Korean soldiers by Ukrainian forces marks a turning point in the war, not only providing indisputable evidence of North Korea's involvement, but also reshaping the narrative surrounding Russia's military strategy. As the world awaits further revelations, one thing is clear: Ukraine's resilience and strategic ingenuity continue to challenge and expose the vulnerabilities of its adversaries, offering valuable lessons for the international community in addressing authoritarian aggression. The conflict in Ukraine continues to expose unexpected and alarming alliances, one of which involves North Korean soldiers fighting alongside Russian forces. While much has been said about the geopolitical dimensions of this partnership, the human stories behind these soldiers reveal a harrowing tale of manipulation, disillusionment, and exploitation. Unlike Russian troops, North Korean soldiers deployed in Ukraine face an overwhelming disconnect from modern communication tools and digital literacy. Many are likely unaware of the basic functionalities of the internet, making traditional psychological operations less effective. Recognizing this significant barrier, Ukraine crafted a unique approach to reach these fighters. The Ukrainian military began distributing Korean-language leaflets across frontline areas known to house North Korean troops. These physical materials provided clear, actionable instructions on how to surrender, emphasizing the benefits of laying down arms and seeking asylum. A particularly striking line in these leaflets read, "Surrender today and join South Korea tomorrow." This statement appealed to the soldiers' dreams and cultural identities, contrasting the oppressive regime they serve with the freedoms and opportunities awaiting defectors in South Korea. This direct appeal not only humanized the Ukrainian effort, but also resonated deeply with those soldiers longing for a better life. Although the effectiveness of this leaflet campaign remains uncertain, it holds the potential to save lives by offering these soldiers a way out of a brutal and dehumanizing conflict. The two North Korean soldiers recently captured by Ukrainian forces have become symbols of this complex narrative. Both were severely wounded during their capture, with injuries including multiple jaw wounds, a fractured leg, and a bandaged hand. Despite the extent of their injuries, their conditions are stable and non-life-threatening. Ukrainian authorities, with support from South Korea's National Intelligence Service, have employed Korean-speaking interpreters to facilitate communication with the soldiers, revealing startling truths about their circumstances. The soldiers, aged 20 and 26, were identified as members of the Reconnaissance General Bureau, North Korea's military intelligence arm. According to one of them, they were deceived into participating in the war. Believing they were part of a routine military exercise, they only discovered the reality of their deployment after arriving in Russia. This revelation challenges the prevailing assumption that North Korean troops in Ukraine are unwaveringly loyal to Kim Jong-un's regime. Instead, it highlights the coercive and deceptive tactics used to manipulate them into participating in a foreign conflict far removed from their homeland. Understanding the plight of these soldiers requires a closer look at the harsh realities faced by North Korean military personnel. Stories like that of Ryu Song-hyun, a defector who escaped North Korea in 2019, provide valuable insight into the oppressive conditions endured by soldiers under Kim Jong-un's regime. Ryu described a life dominated not by traditional military duties, but by forced labor at construction sites, endless hours of standing guard in freezing temperatures, and chronic malnutrition. Soldiers subsisted on rice mixed with corn, with meat being a rare luxury akin to a holiday gift. This background paints a picture of individuals accustomed to hardship and deprivation, making them easy targets for manipulation. When told they were embarking on a military exercise, these soldiers likely saw an opportunity for better rations, improved conditions, or even a glimmer of hope for escape. Instead, they were thrust into a violent and unfamiliar war, fighting for a cause they neither understood nor supported. The status of these captured soldiers raises difficult moral questions. Are they victims of a repressive regime coerced into war, or are they active participants in a campaign of aggression? The answer lies in a nuanced understanding of their situation. On the one hand, their indoctrination under Kim Jong-un's authoritarian rule fosters a culture of absolute obedience and sacrifice. On the other hand, their personal testimonies reveal a stark contrast between loyalty and exploitation. The story of these soldiers challenges simplistic narratives about North Korean military involvement. It underscores the human cost of authoritarian regimes that prioritize power over the welfare of their people, using their own citizens as pawns in geopolitical games. Ukraine's efforts to reach and save North Korean soldiers highlight its commitment to minimizing unnecessary suffering, even among enemy combatants. By tailoring psychological operations and offering pathways to surrender, Ukraine demonstrates a strategic and humane approach to undermining enemy morale while fostering defection. This not only weakens Russia's operational capacity, but also shines a light on the exploitation inherent in its alliance with Pyongyang. For the international community, the involvement of North Korean soldiers in Ukraine raises pressing questions about how to address Pyongyang's complicity in global conflicts. It also emphasizes the need to support defector pathways and ensure that individuals trapped in oppressive systems have avenues to rebuild their lives. The capture of these two North Korean soldiers is more than just a tactical victory for Ukraine. It is a window into the human dimension of war. Their stories serve as a reminder of the resilience and dignity of individuals caught in the crossfire of authoritarian ambition. As Ukraine continues its fight for sovereignty, it also exposes the broader injustices perpetrated by regimes that exploit their people in pursuit of power. The ongoing conflict in Ukraine continues to unveil distressing narratives, none more tragic than the exploitation of North Korean soldiers fighting under Russia's command. These troops, manipulated into participating in a war they did not choose, serve as pawns in a geopolitical game that disregards their humanity. Through testimonies, intelligence reports, and battlefield discoveries, the grim reality of their deployment has come to light, offering a harrowing glimpse into the human cost of authoritarian ambition. Recent revelations have painted a bleak picture of how North Korean soldiers are coerced into Russia's war effort. Captured North Korean soldiers have confirmed that they were deceived into believing they were participating in routine military exercises. Upon their arrival in Russia in November, they were given just 1 week of cursory training under Russian military authorities before being thrust into combat. Armed with outdated weapons and inadequate gear, they were sent to the front lines with little understanding of the mission or the stakes. This manipulation reflects a broader strategy by Kim Jong-un's regime, which reportedly sent approximately 11,000 troops to bolster Russia's faltering campaign. Many of these soldiers arrived in Ukraine without knowledge of their true mission, leaving them vulnerable, disoriented, and ill-prepared. Once on the battlefield, their situation deteriorated rapidly, with no clear leadership or guidance from their Russian counterparts. Amidst the chaos of war, human stories often provide profound insight into the lives of those involved. One such moment occurred when Ukrainian forces recovered the body of a North Korean soldier in the KSK region. Among the usual items like weapons and tactical gear, they found a crumpled handwritten note in Korean, a rare and deeply personal artifact. Dated December 9th, the note read, "Dear Songjong, my closest comrade in arms, I am celebrating your birthday here on Russian land, far away from our beloved Chosun or homeland, and without the embrace of your affectionate father and mother. I sincerely wish you good health and a happy birthday." This brief letter underscores the shared humanity of soldiers caught in war, regardless of the side they fight for. It reveals the emotional bonds and longing for home that persist, even in the face of unimaginable hardship. These small glimpses into the lives of North Korean soldiers remind us that they are more than mere instruments of war. They are individuals with dreams, relationships, and vulnerabilities. The conditions faced by North Korean soldiers on the battlefield are nothing short of nightmarish. From the moment they are deployed, they are thrust into a no-win scenario. If they advance toward Ukrainian positions, they face deadly precision strikes, artillery barrages, and drone attacks. If they hesitate or attempt to retreat, they risk execution by their Russian allies, who reportedly use suicide drones and summary executions to enforce compliance. This brutal treatment highlights the expendability of these troops in the eyes of both the Kremlin and Pyongyang. One captured soldier recounted witnessing the deaths of several comrades within hours of deployment. Ukrainian intelligence corroborates these accounts, reporting significant casualties among North Korean units. According to South Korean intelligence, approximately 300 North Korean soldiers have been killed and another 2,700 severely injured since their deployment began. A staggering toll within a matter of weeks. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky estimated the combined casualties at around 4,000, while the White House confirmed over 1,000 deaths or injuries in December alone. Despite the overwhelming casualties, there has been a notable absence of North Korean prisoners of war. This tragic phenomenon stems from the extreme psychological conditioning imposed by Kim Jong-un's regime. North Korean soldiers are indoctrinated to prioritize loyalty to the regime above all else, including their own lives. They are acutely aware of the severe consequences their families would face if they were captured or defected. North Korea's notorious policy of collective punishment ensures that a soldier's perceived failure could result in imprisonment, forced labor, or even execution for their entire family. Faced with such dire stakes, many North Korean soldiers choose suicide over the prospect of surrender. This grim reality reflects the regime's stranglehold on its citizens, turning even those sent abroad into prisoners of fear and propaganda. The plight of these soldiers is deeply tied to the oppressive conditions they endure at home. The North Korean military, far from being an elite force, often functions as a labor pool for the regime. Defectors like Ryu Song-hyun, who escaped North Korea in 2019, have described harrowing conditions in the military, where soldiers are used for construction projects, subjected to extreme weather and chronically underfed. Rations consist of mushy rice and corn, with meat considered a rare luxury. For these individuals, the promise of better meals and living conditions can be a powerful motivator, even if it leads them into a war zone. Ryu admitted that had he been ordered to fight alongside the Russians, he would have agreed without hesitation, driven by the hope of escaping his grueling life in North Korea. This admission sheds light on how the regime exploits its soldiers' desperation, sending them into combat under false pretenses and without adequate preparation. The deployment of North Korean troops in Ukraine not only highlights the desperation of the Russian military, but also raises questions about the sustainability of this alliance. With casualty rates reaching unsustainable levels, it is unclear how long North Korea can continue to supply troops without undermining its own military capacity. Furthermore, the use of deception and coercion to deploy these soldiers underscores the fragility of Pyongyang's control over its military. For Ukraine, the presence of North Korean troops presents both a challenge and an opportunity. By capturing and interrogating these soldiers, Ukrainian forces can gather valuable intelligence about North Korea's role in the conflict, while also exposing the human cost of authoritarian regimes. The story of North Korean soldiers in Ukraine is one of betrayal, exploitation, and tragedy. Manipulated by their own government and abandoned by their Russian allies, these individuals are thrust into a war they neither chose nor understood. Their plight serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of authoritarian ambition and the devastating impact of war on the most vulnerable. As the conflict continues, their stories must not be forgotten, for they highlight the urgent need for accountability, compassion, and a renewed commitment to protecting the dignity of all who suffer in war. The involvement of North Korean soldiers in Russia's war in Ukraine is a grim testament to the exploitation of vulnerable troops by authoritarian regimes. Deployed under questionable circumstances, these soldiers face a battlefield that highlights their lack of preparation the outdated nature of their tactics, and the psychological scars inflicted by their home country. Combined with the brutal realities of modern warfare and the challenges posed by their Russian allies, their plight reveals a deeply troubling picture of manipulation, desperation, and inhumanity. North Korean soldiers deployed to Ukraine are trapped in a grim cycle of fear and inadequate preparation. Reports reveal they receive minimal training, often just a crash course in basic Russian commands, before being thrust into combat. This lack of preparation leaves them ill-equipped to handle modern warfare's complexities, such as drone operations and adaptive battlefield tactics. Moreover, the language barrier between North Korean and Russian troops creates significant challenges. Communication breakdowns during critical moments on the battlefield lead to chaos and inefficiency. Ukrainian units have noted that these soldiers, distinguishable by their mismatched uniforms and outdated gear, rely on antiquated tactics reminiscent of the Korean War. These outdated strategies, emphasizing mass infantry charges and brute force, are disastrously ineffective against Ukraine's agile, technology-driven military. The Korean War of the 1950s relied on strategies of overwhelming enemy forces through mass assaults, static trench warfare, and heavy bombardments. While effective in a mid-20th century context, these methods are entirely unsuitable for modern warfare. Today, precision strikes, drone surveillance, and mobile units dominate the battlefield. Fixed front lines have given way to fluid engagements, making large-scale assaults both costly and futile. North Korean soldiers' reliance on these outdated tactics has rendered them ineffective against Ukraine's modern military. Ukrainian forces, equipped with real-time intelligence and advanced weaponry, have repeatedly outmaneuvered their opponents. Ukrainian drone operators and artillery teams, in particular, have devastated tightly grouped North Korean units, leaving clusters of soldiers exposed to concentrated strikes. Despite witnessing the catastrophic losses of their comrades, North Korean soldiers continue to advance, often in tight formations that make them easy targets. This behavior is not driven by military strategy, but by the harsh psychological conditioning imposed by the North Korean regime. From a young age, soldiers are taught absolute loyalty to Kim Jong-un, and the fear of severe repercussions for failure drives their actions. Collective punishment, a hallmark of North Korea's totalitarian system, ensures that even a single act of perceived disobedience could lead to imprisonment or execution for an entire family. Captured soldiers have described the dual threats they face. If they advance, they risk being killed by Ukrainian forces. If they retreat, they face execution by their Russian allies. Russian forces have reportedly used suicide drones and summary executions to enforce discipline, leaving North Korean troops in a no-win scenario. Among the most poignant stories are those of two captured North Korean soldiers. Severely injured during their capture, these men offered a rare glimpse into the lives of those coerced into this conflict. When asked if they wished to return to North Korea, one soldier expressed a desire to remain in Ukraine, hinting at the stark contrast between his experiences in the two countries. The other soldier, after a moment of hesitation, nodded when asked again, using the term Choson, the North Korean name for their homeland, likely influenced by fear for his family or mistrust of his captors. Their stories underscore the complexity of their situation. Both soldiers are victims of a system that manipulates them into fighting a war that serves neither their interests nor those of their families. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has stated that Ukraine is willing to return captured North Korean soldiers in exchange for Ukrainian prisoners held by Russia. For those who refuse to return, alternatives are being explored, including the possibility of asylum or aiding efforts to share the truth about the war with the Korean people. In a desperate bid to deny the presence of North Korean troops, Russian authorities have resorted to issuing fake military IDs. One such case involved a North Korean soldier, identified with a fraudulent ID, listing him as a local from Russia's Republic of Tuva. However, the ID was riddled with inconsistencies. It lacked a photo, signature, and issuance date. Journalists investigating the matter discovered that while the ID used the name of a real person from Tuva, the details did not match. This clumsy attempt at deception highlights Russia's efforts to obscure its reliance on foreign fighters, even as mounting evidence contradicts their denials. The toll on North Korean forces in Ukraine has been devastating. According to South Korean intelligence, approximately 300 North Korean soldiers have been killed and 2,700 injured since their deployment. Ukrainian President Zelensky estimates the total number of casualties, killed and wounded, at around 4,000. Even conservative estimates from U.S. officials confirm over 1,000 deaths or injuries in December alone. Despite these staggering losses, the number of captured North Korean soldiers remains low. Many prefer to take their own lives rather than surrender, driven by fear of the consequences for their families under North Korea's regime. This phenomenon underscores the psychological stranglehold the regime maintains over its soldiers, even on foreign soil. The deployment of North Korean soldiers to Ukraine represents a convergence of authoritarian exploitation and modern warfare's brutal realities. These individuals are pawns in a larger game, used by their regime and abandoned by their supposed allies. Their lack of preparation, outdated tactics, and the unrelenting psychological pressure they face highlight the human cost of this geopolitical alliance. As the war continues, their stories serve as a reminder of the profound suffering inflicted by authoritarian systems. By shedding light on their experiences, Ukraine not only exposes the desperation of its adversaries, but also offers a compelling argument for global solidarity against tyranny. In the end, these soldiers are not just casualties of war, they are casualties of the regimes that exploit them. The revelation of North Korean soldiers fighting alongside Russian troops in Ukraine has added an unexpected and troubling dimension to the conflict. Russia's attempts to disguise their involvement, including tying them to Tuva, a remote and marginalized region within the Russian Federation, reveal both a strategic ploy and a deeper pattern of systemic exploitation. This development has significant implications not only for Ukraine, but also for global geopolitics, as it underscores the lengths to which authoritarian regimes will go to obscure their actions and manipulate vulnerable populations. Tuva, located in southern Siberia, is one of Russia's most ethnically distinct regions. Its population, predominantly of Asiatic descent, bears physical similarities to North Koreans. By linking captured North Korean soldiers to Tuva, Russia's plan was likely to obscure their foreign origins and pass them off as locals. This approach banks on superficial plausibility, but it quickly unravels under scrutiny. First, there is the issue of language. While Tuvans speak a Turkic language and are often bilingual in Russian due to decades of Soviet integration, North Korean soldiers have no such linguistic background. Reports indicate that these soldiers receive only a crash course in basic Russian commands before deployment, leaving them ill-prepared to communicate effectively on the battlefield. This stark language barrier creates confusion and exposes their true identity. Second, cultural differences further complicate the deception. Tuvans, though marginalized, have grown up within the Russian Federation and share some degree of cultural familiarity with broader Russian society. In contrast, North Koreans have spent their lives in one of the most isolated regimes in the world. Their mannerisms, behaviors, and even military tactics are noticeably distinct, making it clear they are not locals. Such differences quickly undermine the credibility of Russia's cover story. Russia's attempts to provide North Korean soldiers with fake Tuvan IDs are emblematic of its poorly executed deception. In one instance, a captured soldier's ID claimed he was a local from the Republic of Tuva, but the document was riddled with errors. It lacked basic features such as a photograph, signature, and issuance date. Journalistic investigations revealed further discrepancies. The individual named on the ID was a real person, but their details, such as birthplace and profession, were fabricated. These amateurish attempts at concealment highlight the desperation of Russia's efforts to obscure the presence of foreign troops. Tuva's selection as a cover for North Korean soldiers also reflects a deeper systemic issue: Russia's exploitation of its marginalized regions. Tuva joined the Soviet Union in 1944 and has since been one of its poorest and most neglected areas. The region suffers from high unemployment, inadequate infrastructure, and systemic discrimination. Despite this, Tuvans, like other minority groups in Russia, are disproportionately sent to fight on the front lines in military conflicts. This pattern reflects a long history of using vulnerable populations as expendable resources in war. By associating North Korean soldiers with Tuva, Russia not only attempts to obscure their foreign origins, but also perpetuates its entrenched system of ethnic and regional exploitation. The use of soldiers from marginalized communities as cannon fodder underscores the dehumanizing tactics employed by the Kremlin. For Ukraine, the exposure of North Korean troops in the conflict offers a powerful opportunity to galvanize international support. President Volodymyr Zelensky has consistently framed the war as a struggle not just for Ukraine's sovereignty, but as a broader battle between democracy and authoritarianism. By revealing the extent of Russia's collaboration with one of the world's most oppressive regimes, Zelensky strengthens this narrative. This strategy has already proven effective. NATO and the European Union have rallied behind Ukraine, providing financial aid, military equipment, and diplomatic support. The revelation of North Korean involvement reinforces the urgency of their assistance, as it highlights the dangerous lengths to which authoritarian powers will go to undermine the global order. South Korea has taken particular interest in North Korea's involvement in Ukraine, viewing it as a significant threat to regional and international stability. This collaboration raises two critical concerns. First, the deployment of North Korean troops alongside Russian forces sets a dangerous precedent. It signals Pyongyang's willingness to provide direct military support to its allies, raising fears that Russia might reciprocate in future conflicts, particularly on the Korean Peninsula. Second, the exchange of military technology between North Korea and Russia poses an even greater threat. South Korea has expressed alarm over reports that North Korea is gaining access to advanced Russian weapon systems, including satellite technology, drones, long-range artillery, and missile systems. For a regime already equipped with nuclear weapons, such advancements could exacerbate tensions and destabilize the region further. In response to these developments, South Korea has ramped up both its diplomatic and military efforts. Diplomatically, South Korea has collaborated closely with the United States and other allies to push for stricter sanctions on Russia and North Korea. At international forums like the United Nations, South Korean officials have urged the global community to address the growing threat posed by this alliance. On the military front, South Korea is accelerating the development of its defense capabilities. The deployment of advanced missile defense systems, increased joint military exercises with the United States and Japan, and investments in cutting-edge technologies such as drones and AI-driven defense systems are key components of its strategy. South Korea is also fast-tracking the production of its KF-21 Boramae fighter jets, aiming to bolster its air superiority and deter potential aggression. For the thousands of North Korean soldiers still deployed in Ukraine, the future is bleak. Reports indicate alarmingly high casualty rates, with estimates suggesting that 6,000 to 7,000 troops remain out of an initial force of approximately 11,000. Many of these soldiers face the same grim fate as those who have already perished, caught in a cycle of outdated tactics, poor preparation, and ruthless discipline. The captured North Korean soldiers offer a rare glimpse into the human cost of this exploitation. One soldier expressed a desire to remain in Ukraine, hoping for a life free from the fear and oppression he endured in North Korea. However, the fear of what might happen to their families under Kim Jong-un's regime looms large. Ukraine has indicated that it may explore alternatives for these soldiers, including asylum or the possibility of resettlement in South Korea. The use of North Korean soldiers in Ukraine highlights the extreme measures Russia is willing to take to sustain its war effort. By exploiting both its own marginalized populations and vulnerable foreign troops, the Kremlin reveals its disregard for human life and international norms. For Ukraine and its allies, this exposure serves as a rallying point, reinforcing the need to confront authoritarian aggression. As the war continues, the plight of these soldiers underscores the human cost of authoritarian ambition. Their stories serve as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of exploitation and the urgent need for global solidarity in the face of tyranny.